Welcome to MSP 1337. I'm your host, Chris Johnson, a show dedicated to cybersecurity challenges, solutions, a journey together, not alone. I'm joined this week by Matt Lee of Pax8, and it is vastly approaching Pax8 Beyond EMEA.
Yeah, man.
Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, bud. Thanks for having me on. I hope this comes out before the show. We'll see.
It
right?
will go live
Good.
today, because otherwise we will be wrapping up EMEA if it comes out next week.
That checks out.
So next week I have an episode coming out that's talking a little bit about Beyond, because I did record it in advance, but it was really about capturing, the month of October, how many events like this, there is events happening all over the globe. I think we counted that were something like 40 plus events that are happening throughout the month of October. The crazy one was we saw that there was roughly a half a dozen to about 10 that are happening on the same 2 days. So while EMEACon, or while Pax8 EMEA is happening, there are I think we counted roughly another 6 or 7 events happening at the exact same time somewhere else in the world, all cybersecurity focused. So first and foremost, Matt, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening at Pax8 Beyond, specifically around caption flag, or CTF as people tend to just refer to it. And then just kind of some of your thoughts around, as we roll into October, some of the events that you're going to be at and things that you're seeing take place. I constantly find myself joking of if you put AI in the title of your presentation, it's a guaranteed slam dunk you get to present it.
Dude, right? 100%. Which to joke, I'm doing 2 talks on AI. So take it with a grain of salt, right? And they do have AI in the title.
It's ironic, because even if you are talking about AI, I had one where I was referring to AI in the content, and the event coordinator asked me if I could change the title to include AI in it just for better tracking.
Yeah.
And then they were like, does this one, right, does this fall under our AI content track, or should this fall under the business leaders track? And I'm like, it's up to you guys. It's your event. I don't know at this point.
Your party. Yeah. The thing too is for me, my talks that I'm giving are with Eric Stevens. Eric's a really deep researcher. He's a fellow, I guess, for whatever that term is, same as Roddy Bergeron, right? But he's a senior VP. And all he does is deal with the kind of skunk works around modern AI and things that I can't talk about that are super cool. But some of the things that he is doing is we're trying to define kind of some terms and trying to define some things in the attack surface, almost, if you will, the OSI model of how AI and LLMs communicate around MCPs specifically, without getting too nerdy. But ultimately, it's called Giving Swords to Our Future AI Overlords. And the talk starts with, without giving away too much, an abuse of LinkedIn and prompt injection and chained injection to force a bot to allow us to access the server room. And we then take that video and all made in AI, obviously, and then break it apart and see, what is the system prompt and what does an injection look like, and what does a chain injection do, and why does it matter, and what's the real core problem here? Is it the user plane being exposed to the control plane? And then we talk about, we make some memes, make some jokes, and ultimately walk through a lot of the different attacks, like indirect and stored prompt injections versus which an indirect is almost always stored, a stored is almost always an indirect. But direct injections, where someone that has the hands on the keyboard is going in. So anyways, the talk is really about how all of these problems exist, and then we're going to hook up MCPs to it and let it have access to APIs. That sounds brilliant. Let's definitely kill ourselves. Anyways, and then we're doing it again at Wild West Hackin' Fest with a different spin, where we actually have to say the future is ... And the problem is the first words that came to mind were expletives.
It's funny that you bring that up. I had a conversation yesterday afternoon with a group of MSPs that are going through the trust mark, and their question was specifically around, do we have enough safeguards within the trust mark or in some of the frameworks that are out there to manage around AI? And
yes and no.
Yeah, that is exactly that is
It's yes and
exactly what
no.
we said.
The same principles around data, if you want to think very pedantically,
Yep.
apply. The same things around how one sets up principle of least privilege apply. Like when we give our finishing what you should do to protect yourself around MCPs, a lot of the things are already in the playbook,
Right.
right? Principle, least privilege, access. But when you start thinking about like, oh, what about filters of a prompt output? No, that's not really in the playbook. What
Yeah.
about what
The man
about
in the middle attack of a
yeah,
malicious
well, and
user.
and and some of the things that come up as those protections are like human in the loop. Nobody wants to hear it, but
Right.
there might be a fucking person having to actually sit there and press the button. I make a picture of like Homer Simpson doing this is the way I
Yeah.
do that picture of
But
like
no joke,
the
like knowing
bird.
when to close the gate because of the
Yeah,
direction that the
this doesn't
questions
look
are
right.
going.
This went weird. I got to kill this. And so, but people think of it only in the context of a chat prompt and data management. Think about when that becomes, I now can go start your car in the garage and lock the doors and kill someone. Like, or
Right.
imagining like when you think about these API, unless you have an electric car, then joke's on you.
Right.
Anyways, but
But you get into like, so you see this with, I think it's the ISO 47001. They talk about the ethics, the trust, the integrity of what it is that's being done. You see the one that came out from NIST, which gets more into, to your point of like, what are you building that
yeah,
is
that's my thought
leveraging.
of it.
Right. And I think the interesting part, and I kind of shared this, I said, think of it like the Microsoft Marketplace. If you're the user and I allow you to just have free reign in the marketplace,
Yeah.
bad things are bound to happen at some point down the road.
It, yeah.
Or the
Sorry.
potential is there without, if we don't, we can put guardrails in place. It's not going to be perfect, but just
Yeah.
turning on the tools, that's where I have a problem.
Well, and what I guess what I'm saying in very simple terms is the principles exist. A lot of the tooling that needs to be there, and some of the new principles do not exist in the context of this kind of
Fair.
interaction. But if you think back to even Control 16 and CIS talking about application design, the principles still apply. Here's what I wanted to say, and the reason I jumped in is I believe what we're doing is measuring harm. And I think what's interesting about the category harm is that it can be applied in a lot of ways. Here's a simple one. I have this NFL Pick'em app that me and my son have been working on since before week 1 to track our family's picks. I have done harm as a human in the loop by not taking action or not putting the appropriate filters several times. That's simple harm. Week 1 got cleared. Fixed it and said, please don't clear the data again. Week 2 got cleared. Please, please, please don't clear the data again. So harm can be incidental harm like that, or it could literally be killing someone with carbon monoxide in the garage on purpose. I mean, any of those harm structures and anywhere between. You look at what Sunil Yu's doing at Gnostic. He's sending 100,000 prompts to a persona and then measuring the outputs of those prompts in some measured way with another LLM. Like, that's LLMs measuring LLMs for harm. That means they're also susceptible to prompt injection. They're also anyways, I didn't want to go off on a tangent. The conversation though is that this October, there's a lot of activity going on. And without getting into a real long tangent, Chris, of like, are there too many events? Yes, if you see the same people at them. But if you're talking about the breadth of all of the events that are happening, there's a whole lot of learning going on. I recently just spent a lot of time in the title world, in Vail, Colorado, as well as in I don't know, somewhere else, wherever I was, Phoenix maybe, and in
Sure.
Phoenix, and they're getting their learning and they're having these same
Yeah.
conversations. And so like, I think to your point, this end of the pool of MSP focused, SMB centric events. SMB serving MSPs events across the world. We're at like 500 Henry's tracking. Like, holy Jesus, man. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think about what I do next year differently. I may produce a lot more content and do less travel and be more purposeful with the travel I do and make sure it's making an impact. I just can't continue to say the same things to the same people in the same ways. But that's why I switched a lot of my efforts and Jason's efforts into AI and AI discussions, AI security,
Sure.
a lot of the gaps. So that's where my happy place is right now, is that kind of dabbling. But
And I would say then more from us talking about how does that factor in with compliance? Because I think
it doesn't yet.
there's
It
right.
doesn't yet. There's just not. This hasn't been solved. I think the challenge is some asshole is going to make a decision one way, another asshole is going to make a decision another way. I think you're going to try to apply the square brick policy to a round tube. I think you're going to find just challenges with this, and so I don't want to under or overstate it. I think at this point, it really is to the discretion of someone assessing an environment and what that looks like with the use of AI, because there aren't a lot of new standards that have been applied or industry adopted. Like ISO 27001 doesn't say, how do you use your MCP server that was just thrown out in the wild by a company called Anthropic last year and everybody's adopted without any RFC or conversation or risk or. In fact, what's funny is one of my slides is the missing third finger that says safety third. And it's because if you look, the third release of Anthropic's MCP was the first time security essentially was addressed. Like the first time they went into auth-in kind of authorization and things to, can I use this weapon correctly? Like we made the nukes, then the button to protect the nukes. Like this seems like it's backwards.
Well, it's funny you say that. I had a shop teacher in high school that literally had, he was like on both hands.
He's missing 2 digits on each hand. Oh God.
Yeah. So you'd be shocked to hear this, but like it was the same incident, not the same incident, but the same play out. So the bandsaw tipped over. Yeah. It tipped
really?
over. He tried to catch it.
Oh, geez,
and about a year later, it tipped over in the other direction, and so he solved for that too. So
you know what's funny is that may have
he can't solve for it anymore.
That may have only been incremental engineering, right? Because he only fixed the one-way tipping and didn't think maybe this bastard would tip the other way too. Like let's not even get into grabbing the moving band as a methodology of control of a falling saw. Like I don't even want to get into that.
No,
but like, geez, man. Okay, back to topic. One of the things I said was I've been doing a lot of dabbling, and that's caused me to buy like, I don't know, 100 MacBooks, and like I think I'm at 5 MacBooks, Chris, for the various people in my family, just that switch over anyway. But also one of the dabblings has been like having lab resources and having the ability to like do stuff. And we can get into that, or we can get into kind of what I'm doing.
Did you get Apple Care on those? Because the Apple Care Plus is like $20 a month, and it includes your piece. You can do your laptop, your iPad, your headphones. It's all lumped together. It's like accidental damage. I stumbled upon it on accident. And I'm like,
okay.
And then each additional device was like $4 a month. So you get 3 devices covered out of the gate, and then you can add incrementally under one. Anyways, totally ramble. So let's talk about the dabbling thing is, I think, a really fun topic, because we talked about this before the show. It's one thing for an engineer to go out and use Azure or AWS. There's lots of cloud infrastructure out there today that can allow you to test different models, use different things. But one of the things that you're always having to do is learn that ecosystem in order to do the firewalling and have all those things in place, that when you do it in a lab, sort of in an offline model, you have fixed cost. You have no one can get to it unless you choose to allow them to be able to get to it.
Yep.
You are in control of what that infrastructure looks like. And
sure.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, you're in control of where the API keys live for a lot of the services you might be connecting to. And let's take a simple scenario. Let's say you want to run an N8N or Naten. I just want to say it both ways every time, so I piss people off.
Please do. Please do.
My N8N host, and N8N's been around a long time, right? It's not like this is brand new. It's just brand new in its applique in this conversation, I suppose, right? And so let's say you want to run that. Well, you have to buy a host to run it, right? If you want any decency. And even if you're not going to run local LLM models, let's pretend like we're not running any local LLM models directly, but we're just wanting a place to do compute, a place to build infrastructure if you're making code. Like right now, I do most of that stuff on my MacBook and host it, or I do that stuff on, Cloudflare Workers or something that I can control access to your point. Sure. But that has cost potentially. So let's focus on this. I need infrastructure. There's a super cheap way to do that, as long as you don't need RAID and you manage the things as ephemeral as they are, and that's the way you got to think about them, or you have other backup methodologies, or you're using other RAID as your storage volumes, as I do in some cases. But there is no replacement for the price that you can get a lab environment right now, brand new. There's a B-Link SER8. Chris, you can put your affiliate link down there in the bottom or whatever.
Yeah, it's probably about, what does it run, about $500 on the high end?
You can spend $500 to $700. I think the best value right now is the $499 version on Amazon, technically.
Yeah.
It has an AMD Ryzen 7 in it. The newer one has an AMD Ryzen 7 8845HS, which is 65 watts. I mean, think about that. That's not bad. It's 65
No.
watts, man.
Yeah.
It goes,
Let's put that
yeah,
into perspective. A desktop
it's a light
PC, a
bulb.
tower, is going to be at between 500 on the low end and
Yeah.
somewhere around 900 watts.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a toaster versus this thing, right? So
Right.
5.1 gigahertz, 8 cores in this for the Ryzen GPU, CPU, NPU in one chip. 16 threads, right? So it has the ability to do hyper-threading. And then with 16 megs of L3 Smart Cache, it's a 39% improvement over its benchmark from the original 7 that they were using in the last model. You have a 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte SSD. You can get them in 2 1 terabytes, which means you could probably configure some form of RAID in that way. I haven't done it that way. I've only done one drive.
Well, they
Um,
do have 8 slots for PCIe, so you could do some things with leverage that card slot and put, some sort of.
I'm not sure where you'd put that though. Like it's just very small form factor.
That's
So like
true. That's true.
it'd have to be external PCI, probably is my gut of some sort. But the point
Yeah,
is,
that's fair.
it's really well done. It's really well engineered. It looks like a Mac Mini, like ultimately.
Right.
But I'm running right now on 2 of them. I have 2 with 16 gigs of RAM each. Or I think they have 32 gigs of RAM each. I apologize. 32 gigs of RAM each. And it's DDR5. But anyways, I'm running on an SSD or NVMe drive. I have 1, 2, 3 Windows servers, a GitLab host running with 8 gigs of RAM. I have a
Yeah,
Cloudflare tunnel, and I'm using the other host with Proxmox, which both of them are running Proxmox, and this runs Proxmox really nicely.
I'm sure.
It's fantastic. And then I have 2 of those running, not as even in a cluster, just 2 different devices on different VLANs. And then I'm using
Oh, you're
GitLab.
you're running them completely separate. You're not running
Yeah,
Proxmox
I'm
and
not.
saying these are my 2 boxes.
I'm not. I'm running them as separate Proxmox
Got it.
entities. And I'm using one to be controlled by GitLab of the other for our boot camp. So I can't imagine what could go wrong if GitLab got compromised and what would happen to the source
I
code.
wonder what could happen
But
there.
I've been using Claude Code to build for this boot camp in November. I've been using Claude Code to build an actual water controller for our simulation that's controlling ESP32s around the country. Legitimately C squared software, all running on these 2
Sure.
V-Links that cost me less than $1,000. Like, and then I got a Unify 2.5 gig. It's like 15 or 20 watts of power. The whole thing runs on less than 200 watts of power, which means you
Which
could
means
run
you
it
can
on a
run it in
boat.
your car and you don't need a second battery.
100% you could. Yeah. So it's interesting what you can get for your money now. I think the new ones are on sale from like $729 to $600 or something for the high end ones. They also claim to be able to run LLMs because of the Ryzen 7, and they claim to be great for AI. I would probably say as long as you don't need a high number of tokens per second type of play out, then
Yeah,
maybe.
it might be a little
Um,
slow, but you'd
yeah.
feasibly still get pretty solid results.
And you'd be very limited on what RAM, unless it shares its system storage, unless it shares the RAM as system
Yeah.
VRAM, which it might do. If that's the case, then potentially. But I'm not familiar with AMD's chipset enough to know. But anyways, but for the
Yeah,
point, they're super
I'm more
cheap.
of an Intel
They
guy.
both run Proxmox. They're both fantastically fast. I ran an RDS host and can RDS in and use it quite fine. But to your point, the next step was what you choose to expose, right? Like, think about this conversation I had with John Kindervag of like, what's the difference between attack surface and protect surface? The attack surface is what you choose to expose to your enemy. The protect surface is everything. You have to protect everything. You don't have to
Yeah,
expose it, stupid. Like, you have to make the attack surface this port being open to the world. So everything I do is on Cloudflare tunnels or is done with Cloudflare access blocking unless you've been authenticated before you can access that device and
sure.
have that. So it gives you that ability to be very flexible. And then I want to close one thing back to this infrastructure for cheap. If you are building web applications and you want to test them and you want to use them in the wild in production, if you get a Cloudflare account and pay for the simple $20 a month ZT access piece for your domain, you
Yeah.
can use the worker pages up to 100,000 queries a day. Like, you're not going to exceed that with most, unless you just get fantastically well, in which you'll be able to pay for it, right? Like, you do well with
Right.
it, right, you'll be able to pay for it. But like the point is that I've had my son's built a D&D thing for a character making thing. All of that's been done through Claude Code and tied in with other MCPs, back to my destroying our world with AI overlords in the future, right? And so you have to be the human in the loop that looks at it and goes, no, that's a stupid idea. No, stop
Right.
doing that. And I'm able to do that with growing knowledge. I'm quite the ignorant programmer when it comes to TypeScript and other, random languages and things that I'm just not familiar with. But especially programming a web app in TypeScript is my point.
But so Matt, I think one of the things that is really cool about the lab setup that you created, it's not about being a great coder or being good at web development. It's about this learning process that allows you to articulate to someone who is what you're trying to achieve. So you remember back in the day when web developers would get a bad rap because they'd build the website out and then it wouldn't go live for months because the client wouldn't give them the content that's supposed to go in it. And they're like, well, I thought you're responsible for putting the content. And they're like, well, yeah, but like, I don't know what you do in construction.
Right.
I don't know what kind of bridges you build. Like, so what do you want me to talk about? Like, I don't know what your core values are, your mission statement. Those are things that are important to you to be on the website. You have to tell me. And I think when you go through the exercise that you've described, it allows you to understand the pieces, even if you wouldn't be best at building them yourself. And I think that's one of the areas, tying this back to AI a little bit, vibe coding and tools like Lovable and such that are out there, the ability to get your vision onto something that other people can see. It's not just stuck in your head. And now the people that really are good at building, now you're incorporating them at the part of the equation where the dollars spent is far more valuable when they come into the equation than when you started at zero and going, yeah, I want this web application. It does X. Go.
Yeah. All right. I don't even want to get off on this long tangent, but really, what's really neat is the same application design principles apply. If you put garbage in, you'll get garbage out. If you just say to 12 developers, go build this with no clear plan. And so a lot of people expect vibe coding to be able to do that. You look at anything Ash puts out, Ashley Cooper, or anything around the way her brain works and thinks about these things. Like, she gives it 400 pages of instruction. And Jason and I often will have an LLM build just the plan for the other LLMs to go break apart and plan. So like the plan for the planners can be planned by someone. And so like we get very deeply into that. So before I release an application, there's things like, hey, don't destroy production data, have a dev environment, have these CI/CD test capabilities. We're going to be deploying behind this type of technology or this type of tool, ensure that we're working with these standards that we give guys. So like, anyways, without going off on a massive tangent, there's a lot of effort that goes. A lot of it comes from learning fucking up. Like, it just sucks. So
yeah, and I think all of us at this point, I shouldn't say all of us, most of us, if you're in a environment for work, probably have at this point access to Copilot. I got dialed in. I know, right? I got dialed into using Copilot. I got Premiere or whatever it is, Premium, and I was going to town. I built out this great notebook, and it was giving me results, and I was so excited about it. It was just great. So I go travel, gone for 2 weeks, didn't really use it a whole lot, come back. I could ask it the exact same questions I had asked it 2 weeks before, and it's giving me definitions of the acronyms that aren't even in the category of technology. I started getting healthcare terms out of it. And so I was just going to tie that back to what you said earlier about how things like it clears out it's not saving the information, it cleared the database, window, those kind of things. And so
that was anyways, sorry.
But what I found is that's because it wasn't meant to do anything more than temporary. So if I want full time, it stays containerized. I have to go into Copilot Studio, and I have to build the actual agent that's going to contain the data. I can't just use Copilot Premium, which is, that's a significant lift learning process when a client says, "Hey, I want Copilot turned on." Okay, well, do you know how it works?
Yeah. Well, there's the first part of like, assist me with writing things. Fantastic at that. Like, no problem.
Yeah.
Now it's the talk to my data. You have to give it structure for that. I mean, that is ultimately why MCPs exist, or model context protocols, is they give a context setup, they give a tool name, they show how that tool name is going to be functioned, they tell you how the data is going to come in, they give instruction to the LLM about how it's being used. So MCPs are great for that purpose, but what you're talking about in Copilot agents, you're giving a now system prompt that is persistent, but you also could feed it data that you want to be persistent. You can put in like an Excel sheet or whatever that might be and give it like, here's what this week's earning report will always look like. Here's your example.
Right.
Here's what you need to know. Structure yourself so that you can. So to your point, there's like a heavy lift of like what that becomes and how that manages it. And remember, all you're doing is managing something that's looking at the next probability of a word it needs. I mean, I'm being very, very oversimplifying, but like, so it is going to, the more you can contextually shape it within the context window, which, try uploading a 300-page PDF. It'll tell you I can't do that. Like, I can't, it's too big. And what it's dealing with is it's outside of its context window. It's outside of its management capability space. And so you have tools that are MCP servers that just literally manage context windows for things. Like there's stuff out there that just like does code and says, here's the meaningful parts of this code. Here's what this tool does. Here's what each piece of this is. And then it returns back only to the LLM the pieces that are inside its context window to manage that size of its context window rather than asking it to look at 5,000 lines of code or 65.
Right.
Didn't want to turn this into an AI coding conversation challenge.
No. I think it's and of course that's the whole point of the show.
Back to the other piece we wanted
conversations.
To talk about. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the CTF that I'm doing at Beyond in Europe. So if you are going to be at Beyond EMEA, there is a CTF Microsoft's put on. I literally have an Xbox, a pair of Microsoft headphones, and a Microsoft laptop or Surface laptop that are getting shipped with me as long as customs doesn't stop me from bringing it into the country. We'll see. But those will be being given away as to the winners of the CTF. And if you've never done a CTF before, Chris, what's a CTF?
Well, it's capture the flag. I mean, in the digital world, it's not actually walking around looking for the other teams.
That is funny, right? Because they're like, I imagine people hearing CTF are like, bro, it's like I remember that, and I had to run over and grab the flag and hope nobody caught me, and then I hide in the trees for like 3. Anyways.
Yeah, with your paintball guns.
Yeah. So not that. It is definitely like a Jeopardy style in a lot of cases, and in this case as well, a set of challenges that you race against others to get the points to have the fastest to the most points. So most points matters, but fastest to the most points matters. And so first, second, and third get a prize ultimately.
Well, and I would also say, isn't it also kind of like being able to answer like kind of a riddle? I'm not saying it's a riddle, but like you figure out based on that, you get a clue. And sometimes the clues give you a lot of information. Sometimes the clues give you very little information, but you tend to not be able to just jump ahead in many cases and skip steps to get ahead of your opponents.
Yeah, exactly. So it is one of those things where, LLMs help. Sometimes they hurt you badly. I remember spending 3 hours going down a wrong track with an LLM's assisted help with one of the CTFs I was doing. But anyways, join us there. It's going to be fun. Me, Jason Slagle, Dom Kirby, you, all of us are participating. Kristen Fehrenbach. So yeah, it's going to be fantastic from that perspective.
Indeed. So with that, Matt, I think we should wrap this up. So if they can't get across the pond, you're doing a CTF at Wild West Hacking Fest.
No, at Wild West Hacking Fest, I'm doing a talk, AI, giving swords to AI overlords, same one I'm doing in Europe. I'm also going to be doing in October a trip to Vancouver, trip to Toronto. I'll be at Momentum in Toronto, and in Vancouver, I have an event for a MSP called Solulon is what I'm doing there. So all of October.
So there you go. 10 more events in October that we didn't even talk about on the show.
Yeah. Well, then now you have this point of MSPs having their events with their clients. And even this one is Investia Canada, right? So it's actually for all of the stockbrokers in Canada. And so just so many different irons in the fire, man.
Or the insurance one last week in the UK. That was very interesting. So at any rate, we'll wrap this up. For those of you listening, this has been an episode of MSP 1337. Thanks and have a great week.